Recently, I spent 10 days living with my 9-year-old niece while my sister and brother in law went on a vacation. I packed up some crafty things to keep me busy during the school days, and I thought it would be kind of fun to share a packing list or at least some thoughts about crafting on the go. And while we chat about that, I'll be showing you everything I cut, stamped, colored, and inked while I was away, and using it to start assembling some cards. Here's the little box of card components I came home with. While I was away, I heat embossed and colored 30 of these little stained glass angels from Simon Says Stamp. This is my favorite new Christmas stamp set in a long time. Next, here's some die cut stained glass components. I've got a solid white backer and a die cut from white cardstock with the star already inked yellow because I had that color with me. I also had the same die cut from chrome cardstock for an authentic stained glass look, and I kept the stars in case I can use them somewhere else. Next, I've got 30 gold Christmas stars and 30 sets of a big pretty pink posh joy word, as well as 30 navy blue panels. And finally, these 30 ink blended panels were left over from a previous year, and they're going to be the background for my angels. And I have 30 navy blue card bases. These last two items were left at home while I was away, since I didn't need to do anything to them. I'll start by working on the backgrounds here by embossing the sentiment and some stars in gold. First, I recognize that my trip and situation was a little bit unique. It wasn't really a vacation for me, but because of the snowy weather, I knew I was going to have lots of time to fill at home during the school days. So that's the first tip. Think about the type of trip you're going on and how much time you're actually going to have to craft. Each year, I make about 150 Christmas cards for my church, and I felt like this was the perfect type of project to bring along. I generally make between 25 and 30 of each design, so I did a preliminary plan for 3 card designs before I left. I stand by that word preliminary, by the way. You'll see what I'm talking about in a few minutes. And that's the next tip. Decide what you're trying to accomplish during your time. I knew that I wanted to get a good head start on making those 3 designs, so I made a list of what I thought I needed: stamps, dies, inks, cardstock, and then the appropriate tools. Here's what I took with me. For basic tools like a trimmer and die cutting machine, I have a smaller Tim Holtz trimmer that was easy to bring, as well as the little Altenew Blossom die cutting machine. I also brought a heat gun and some embossing powder. As for what to pack it in, any container will do. I was driving and I had lots of space in my trunk, but I do have this bag from a few years ago that's almost like a large cosmetics bag for traveling. It fit pretty much everything I brought except for the die cutter and the trimmer. It's something I take whenever I go to craft with friends. If you're flying, you'll want to think about space in your luggage and also be careful about any gels or liquids you want to bring. While I was away, I actually really had the luxury of lots of time. So I was able to do things like heat emboss these angels and then color all those little areas of their wings with different colored Copics. When I stamped them, I stamped 2 on each panel. Remember that a full panel will not fit through my mini die cutter. So once they were stamped, I trimmed each panel in half before die cutting. And then after I die cut them, I added stickles to their wings and halos for some sparkle. You can also think about your setup when you're crafting while traveling. I was able to set up on the dining room table and leave everything there for the whole time. This also allowed me to bring more than maybe if I had to put it away each night. And depending on where you're staying, you may not have access to a table or a desk to work on at all. After I made up 3 of these angel cards, I pulled out some white Ohuhu card bases that I purchased very cheaply, specifically for my Christmas project. They are surprisingly sturdy, although they're quite a blue-white, and they came with envelopes as well. Those envelopes were not quite as impressive, but they'll work just fine. For the next card, things went wrong from the start, even before I got home from my sister's. My design was to have kind of an eclipse joy word, about navy letters cut from the navy panel and then popped up, and then a gold Christmas star on top. Well, those panels were too big for my mini die cutter, so I couldn't cut the joy word from them while I was away. I did get the white joys and the gold stars done though. And whenever I'm making multiples, I like to start by finishing one card, just in case I have to tweak the design at all. Oh boy, there is some tweaking ahead. So I cut the joy from the navy panel, and then I thought I would emphasize the difference between the word and the background by embossing the background with Altenew Dotty Circle's 3D embossing folder. Smart, right? I glued the background onto one of those white card bases. The next step was to inlay some of the white letters. And then the next step was to glue the navy letters on top of the white. And they totally and completely disappeared. I pulled them off quickly before the glue set, thinking of a solution of just swiping some white ink softly over the raised background to further differentiate between the joy and the background. I actually really like the look of the white on the background, but the letters are still disappearing. I added the star and I set that aside while I had a little think. I thought maybe I would get better contrast by just leaving the letters white. So I cut another joy from another navy panel, and then I put it through the embossing folder, upside down. So it was debossed instead of embossed. So I fixed this by running the panel through just with plates to flatten everything again, and then I re-embossed it the right way around, and it worked really well. Better than I deserved, actually. This time I thought I would try gold ink instead of white, but I don't actually have any gold ink. I do have these interference inks from Lisa Horton, so I grabbed one that said that it would show up gold on black cardstock, and I used that. Not too bad, although I do think I prefer the white. I do have some proper gold ink on order, and with that and all the other things just not going smoothly at this point, I decided to stop working on this design and leave it for another day. I have a vision, and I just need to work out how to achieve it. Do you have any suggestions for this one? Let me know in the comments. For my final design, you can see here that the first one I did was quite simple, chrome outline with a yellow background. But it was only Wednesday, and I had some time, so I figured I would step it up and do some more colors. So after I had cut 30 of the chrome outlines, I also cut 30 of the outlines from white cardstock, and I cut 30 solid backers. For the white outlines, I used mint tape to hold all the pieces in place so I could do some inlay. I had brought so few Copics that I couldn't really color them while I was away, so I did one here today to show you what I'm thinking. One of the ways I limited how much I brought was to plan to make my church Christmas card multiples, so I only had to bring 1 or 2 dies for each card design, but still get a lot of cards done. If you want a more spontaneous crafting session to make a bunch of one-off cards, you'll need to plan differently. Although I would stand by a 6-color rainbow of ink as well as black as a good basic starting point. Maybe you've got a bunch of new stamps and dies you want to get off that unused list. Oh yes, one thing I brought that turned out to be quite important was a small light. My sister's house does not have the same bright natural light that I have in my craft room, so this little rechargeable light was the perfect thing for my little workspace. And another good item was a bunch of small freezer bags. I have one for each project and they really help me keep everything organized. So here's the 2 stained glass windows. What do you think? I think it's worth doing the coloring. This will be a perfect project for a crafty day with my friends. And honestly, at this point, I'm not even sure what I'm doing with these stained glass windows. Maybe I'll put them on a navy background. I think that looks pretty good. Or maybe white. Actually, that's not bad either. It's very clean. Again, that's a design question for another day. In the end, I think I had pretty much everything I needed. The only thing I really didn't bring was the card bases. Again, it's early in the year, and they would have been heavy. And honestly, I wasn't ready to fully assemble any of the cards anyway. Now to finish today on a win, and since I had this stamp set up on my Misty already, I went back and heat embossed the rest of those angel backgrounds, and then I finished the cards while I was in a Zoom co-working session with some friends. I decided to use the navy card bases because I felt they gave better grounding to the ink blended panels, but 3 of them will of course still be on the white card base. So what are your thoughts on crafting when traveling? Is this something you do? I'd love to hear your tips, so let me know. And if you're looking for tips for making multiples efficiently, and yes, I promise, I do know how to do that, even though it didn't really look like it today. There's a playlist right here that you'll be interested in. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time.